只是偶。Do you hear me talking to you across the water, across the deep blue ocean, under the open sky? Oh my, baby, I'm trying. Boy, I hear you in my dreams. I feel you whisper across the sea. I keep you with me in my heart. You make it easier when life gets hard. Lucky I'm in love with my best friend. Lucky to have been where I have been. Lucky to be coming home again. They don't know how long it takes waiting for a love like this. Every time we say goodbye, I wish we had one more.
Nope. All right, everybody can hear me? All right, great. So, hello, I'm here today with John, and today we'll be discussing Kantian ethics. So hopefully by the end of this class, you all will know how to act like perfect human beings, or something like that. We'll see exactly what by the time we end the class. All right. Good stuff. Get a gorgeous girl. I'm not sure which one of us you're referring to. I don't think either of us would qualify as gorgeous girls, but you know, I'll take compliments where I can get them. All right. Cool. So let's begin. All right. So everyone can see my screen? All right. Awesome. So, Kant's ethics. First of all, we start off with our outline. Why are we discussing Kant's ethics? Then, sort of a change from what we normally do, we're going to review Kant's philosophy of knowledge. What did Kant believe about how to think? Then we're going to Kant's philosophy of ethics, which is our actual topic for today. What did he believe about ethics? Then the background, what influenced his philosophy of ethics. And then last, the groundwork for the metaphysics of morals, which is, so we'll cover how Kant argued this philosophy. All right, so a little bit of a change from our normal, but not too big a change. So, introduction. After the Stoics, there are a variety of attempts to come up with guidelines for how to live, with the most influential being Christian ethics. That sort of spreads across the world and changes it in any number of ways. But to my mind, none are particularly rigorous and satisfyingly rigorous. So like we've gone through the whole course of how to think. We looked at Descartes, we looked at Hume, even looked at Thomas Aquinas, and none of the philosophy of ethics really approach the same level of rigor, really build themselves from the ground up in the same way that Descartes' theories do or Hume's theories do, or even are as logical as Thomas Aquinas' arguments. So the first ethical theory that I feel is really both rigorous and logical is Kant's ethics. So we'll talk about that today. So, as our introduction, why are we talking about Kant? Because Kant is the first to build a system of ethics from the ground up. All right. So, normally we'd cover Kant's biography here. I've already done that. Besides, as we mentioned, Kant is a boring individual. In case you forgot what he looks like, this is a peculiarly unflattering portrait of Kant. I don't know if the other portraits of Kant were just nicer or if this one was drawn by someone who dislikes Kant, but he certainly looks very strange in this picture. So Kant's boring, his life was boring, the time of history he lived at was pretty boring. So instead, we're going to review his philosophy of how to think. It'll be important once we get into his ethics. So, to remind you, Kant's philosophy is difficult. Keep track of the terminology. Relates to Hume's attack on induction, and it should make sense. All right. Everyone with me? Then let's go. So, First of all, distinctions about knowledge. So I'll read through this, explain it. John will explain it again briefly, and then we'll go on. All right. So for Kant, there's two distinctions that must be made about all knowledge: analytic versus synthetic, and a priori versus empirical. So analytic knowledge is knowledge by definition. Synthetic knowledge is everything else. So analytic knowledge, Barack Obama's last name is Obama. If you know the definitions of first names and last names, you know that his last name is Obama, just by definition, if someone tells you this is his name. Synthetic knowledge, Barack Obama is the current president of the United States. You would need something else to know that. You don't know that by any definitions. No definition can give you that Barack Obama is the president of the United States. A priori knowledge is knowledge that does not rely on experience. Empirical knowledge is knowledge that relies on experience. It's related to the distinction above, but it's not the same. So for a priori versus empirical, you could use the same example above. You don't need to watch the news to know that this man's last name is Obama, that Barack Obama's last name is Obama. You could know it from the definition. You would need to know watch the news to know that he's the president of the United States. However, there's also different sorts of knowledge. So Kant claims that the equation 2 + 2 = 4 is knowledge that does not rely on experience, but it's not in the definition. You wouldn't know that 2 + 2 = 4 the first time that you did math. You'd have to figure it out. But you would not have to have any experience to know that 2 + 2 = 4. You wouldn't have to actually see 2 objects and 2 objects becoming 4 objects. You could just figure it out through math. So 2 + 2 = 4 is a priori and synthetic. So Kant rescues knowledge from Hume by claiming that the law of causality is synthetic but a priori. In other words, you don't know the law of causality from the definition, but you don't need experience to figure it out. This is a really important claim, so we'll see how Kant defends it. And John, what's the translation?
早上好，对，所以在复习上一节课的内容，不管你是不是愿意接受，现在我们先记住康德对知识做出的2个维度上的重要区分。一个维度上的区分就是分析命题和综合命题之间的区分，另一个维度上是先天命题和后天命题，后天命题也就是经验命题之间的区分。分析和综合的区分在于哪儿？在于什么呢？就是分析命题，它就是一个 tautology， 就是一个反过来复过去说的话，它不会带来新的信息。比如说 Barack Obama 的名字叫奥巴马，但是如果你想知道奥巴马是印度尼西亚人还是美国人，你就给奥巴马这个概念带来一些新的信息。但凡有带来新的信息的概念，就是综合的概念。在另一个维度上，先天的和经验的概念其实很好理解，就是先天的概念不需要经验，而后天的或者经验的概念需要经验。那我们可以想象，就是综合的命题和经验的命题总是很近的，因为综合命题，因为经验的命题某种意义上总能带来新的信息，它总是综合的命题。但是对于康德来说，有那么一些命题，它不需要你有经验世界的反馈，但是你却能得出新的知识，你不是在说废话，它是综合的，但它不需要经验，这就是他所谓的一些先天综合的知识。比如说，在康德看来，数学就是这样的知识。第一方面，它带来新的信息，所以它是综合的，但是呢，它不需要经验，所以它是先天的。大家请记住这2个维度的概念，就是分析和综合。另一方面，先天和经验很重要，在之后的讨论。无论是在他的认识论，还是在他的伦理学中， 这里有一个问题是，永远真的命题是分析命题吗？应该说分析的命题一定是永远真的命题，永远真的命题可能是如果它符合符合逻辑框架的定义，分析命题永远真的命题应该是分析的，应该是自洽的，不然它不可能是分析的。
All right, good stuff. Let's head on to next slide. So, organizing knowledge. Although we get knowledge from the outside world, we organize it intuitively by our mental processes. You can't know anything about the outside world or how your mental picture corresponds to it, but you do know how you yourself organize it. The intuitive way we organize it is with space and time. So you don't know anything about the world outside your mind. You don't know if what you see is the way the world is, but you know how you see it. So for instance, you see a cat on the table, right? On a table. The cat and the table give you your knowledge. The cat is on the table. But your internal processes, your intuition, is what tells you the spatial relationship, that the cat is on the table. If you didn't have these internal processes, if you didn't have this intuition, you wouldn't be able to tell the cat is on the table. That isn't information that's given to you by the outside world. You have to apply your intuition to this information in order to say cat's on the table. So once we have our intuitive understanding, so once we have our understanding before we even know we're understanding it, we can apply to it conscious, high-level understanding. So this is the understanding we know that we're doing, which comes in the form of a priori concepts. So concepts without experience. Causality is one a priori concept, and the rest come from Aristotle's syllogisms. So the rock is on top of the fire. You know that because of your intuitive processes. It's not in the information given to you by the world, but by your intuitive processes, the rock is on the fire. You apply a priori, high-level concept, and you say the fire caused the rock to be hot. All right? So intuitively, without even knowing it, you thought the rock was on the fire, and then you knew that you thought the fire made the rock be hot. It's nonsense to try to apply intuitive understandings of space and time to things which you cannot experience. Then you come up with antinomies, which is a word that Kant, I think, makes up because I've never seen it anywhere else. And these are things which are mutually contradictory, but both seem to be true. So Kant comes up with 4 of these. So this is where we're trying to apply our intuitive understandings to things which we can't experience. So we're only supposed to apply this to things which we can't. So this is the nonsense we come up with when we try to do otherwise. The world has a beginning and is limited versus the world has no beginning and is infinite. A substance is made up of parts versus a substance is not made up of parts. There is both nature's law and free will versus there is only free will. There is absolutely necessary being, aka the prime mover, versus there is God. And you should recognize this sort of stuff from this. Aquinas thought these were, and Aristotle thought these were real important philosophical issues that needed a lot of discussing and arguing. Kant says they're just nonsense. All right, John, translation.
刚才我们说到了，就是回忆到了康德说，在我们进行认识的这样子一个过程中，人不仅仅是被动的接受外部世界的一些影响，或者是刺激，或者是一些 input， 人主要对经验得来的那些原始的材料进行2重的加工，第一重的加工 称作是直观形式。就是说，简单的理解呢，就是说我们会得到很多外部世界来的一些信息，比如说有一些杯子的材料，有一些桌子的材料，但是我们首先要有时间和空间这两个直观形式在我们心中展开了这样子一个三维的一个容器，这样子我们才能把这些外来的信息放在这些容器里，把它们安排好它们的位置。这是我们对外来信息的第一重加工，就是把外来的信息放在我们的时空的直观形式中。那把它们放好以后呢，我们又开始动用我们的所谓的先天概念，比如说因果关系，比如说相等关系，这样子的关系来组织我们之前已经放在时空形式里的每一个物体。这是第二道的加工，这是称为先天概念。这些概念它是先天的，它也是我们在主观方面对客观的数据或者说经验进行加工的一些方法或者说逻辑。那康德说，有一些东西我们是没有办法用这时空形式或者说是鲜艳的概念去处理的。这些东西呢，就是我们没有经验到的东西。如果我们试图把时空形式和先天概念应用到那些我们无法经验到的领域的话，出现二律背反。我们看第三个二律背反，举一个例子，就是说我们一方面觉得这个世界上呢，所有东西都是服从自然律，所有东西都是被因果关系，都是被物理法则编织在一起的，似乎这个世界容不得人的自由意志的任何作用。但一方面我们又觉得我们明明可以自由的选择一些东西。康德说这是为什么呢？他说这就是其实在一些领域，比如说人的行动领域，这个领域是一个独立于客观世界的一个他所谓的一个物自体，或者说他所谓的一个自在的世界。这个世界其实并不是我们经历客观经验那样的经验到的东西。当我们试图的把因果关系投射到我们人的自我决定这样一个领域，实际上我们并没有经验到这个领域。在康德的意义上，把所有经验的方法投射到这个领域的时候，我们就杀死了自由意志。然而，自由意志存在的领域，并不是在于我们客观经验对于客观经验加工的这个领域。所以说，这个二律背反的结果就是我们将刚才所提到的对客观知识的两重加工方法，使用到了它所不能使用到的一些领域上，所导致的一个很奇怪的结果。这是康德的结论。我想大家可能在这里有一些问题，但是大家也可以不同意康德，但是大家或者就是在大方向上理解了这个意思吗？
All right. Cool. Good stuff. All right. So, Kant's theory of space and time. So every sensation has a cause in the world, is organized by us according to our mental processes. The purest forms of these are space and time, which are the same intuitions that every human has. So we've got this guy and his rock wall. So the rock is 1 meter away, which he knows because of his mental perception. If we were in his place, if anyone was in his place, we would see this as 1 meter away. So Kant claims that understandings of space and time aren't gained from experience, but we just have them from the beginning. So they're not empirical, but a priori. He has 4 arguments to prove this. They're mostly about space, and Kant thought that time just followed, obviously. So I've included Russell's disputes about after each argument, sort of in the same way Maimonides was packaged with the rabbi who disagreed with him, and packaged Kant with Russell's disputes. So first, you can't have Kant's first argument, you can't have outer experiences to understand space from, because you can't have the concept of outer experiences without the concept of space. All right. So Kant's argument is, it's not like you need to have yourself and then see the world outside to understand space, to understand that there is a world outside, because Kant says you don't have the concept of a world outside without the concept of space. So it's a question of which one comes first, and Kant says it's obvious that space has to come first. So Russell's disputes. Russell's first dispute is, if space is just intuitive and has no relation to the real world, why does every human being see the same thing? Like this rock being 1 meter away. Why isn't it that some people see 0.5 meters, some people see 1.5 meters? And the same thing applies to time. Why, if time is intuitive, then why does everyone see it the same way? What's caused it to be the same with everything? Because normally we would say that the real world causes time to be the same with everything. That fact that there actually is 1 meter away between this guy and the rock wall causes him to see there's 1 meter between them. So if it's not the real world, then why is everyone seeing it the same way? Russell's second dispute, and this one specific to the first argument, is, do you really need outer experiences to understand space? Like, you know, that seems to be an unfair burden that Kant places on the other side of the argument. Don't instead you need just the idea that different things are in different places, rather than different things are outside yourself. So instead of saying this is myself and other things are in different places, don't you just need like, this is 3 or 5 meters away from this, and this ruler is 0.75 meters away from this rock wall? Like, do you really need like the concept that everything is outside you? So Russell says Kant's being a little too unfair to the people who would disagree with him. Second one is more straightforward. So Kant's argument here is, you can imagine no space. You can't imagine no space, but you can imagine nothing but space. So Kant says, if you look at this picture, you can't imagine there being no space here, that the ruler, the rock wall, and the guy are all one. He says that's literally impossible to imagine. However, you could imagine there's nothing but space. So it was all, I guess, empty. And Russell responds, no, I can't imagine nothing but space any more than I can imagine no space. So it's a pretty simple argument that Russell has, and for this one you can decide for yourself whether or not you like it. Russell just says, this isn't true. I can't imagine nothing but space. All right. Third one, similar thing. So Kant's argument here is, space is not an expression of relations, but an intuition, because there is only one space, and spaces are really parts of space. Things are not related by space, but in space. So Kant says, so it's not like this guy is really 1 meter away and there's space here, and then there's some space between here and here, and there's some space between here and here. Instead, he says everything is in space. So really, it's like a whole space, and this guy's at this point, and this rock wall is at this point in space, and this ruler is at this point in space. So Russell's disagreement is, again, very, very simple. He just says, I disagree. I see things as related by space, not in space. And then Russell's Kant's fourth argument, rather, is parts of space are not instances of space, but are within all of space. So this is different from, say, a cat, which is an instance of the concept cat. Therefore, space is not a concept, but an intuition. So he says, this isn't an instant of space, and this isn't an instant of space in the same way that this is an instance of a man, that this is an object in the general category man. Kant says that's not how it works. Really, this is all within space. This is all space. And Russell's argument is, once again, very simple. Russell just says, nope, that does not seem like the way I understand space. He says, Kant is wrong. I don't see space that way. All right. So, John, you want to?
Yeah, do some comments.
Yeah.
Yeah, 所以刚才最后说到了这样的一个问题，就是我们刚才已经说到了，康德认为我们人的认知系统在开始认知的时候，总要先开始在认知里先展开时间空间，然后把我们外来的信息啊、经验啊都放在这样子的一个时空形式里。对于康德来说，这个时空形式是一切的开始，是认知的起点。那罗素呢，其实他的反对，这4个反对都是在反对这种时空形式的必要性或者时空形式的优先性。对于罗素来说，康德是在把时空这个很客观的范畴，或者是一个很客观的东西，变成一个很主观的投射。康德会说，如果没有人的认知系统，那时空根本无从展开，因为这个世界本来就是一团混沌。那其实这个世界是在我们的认知系统里被展成时间和空间的序列。那罗素会问到，假如说时空系统是这么的主观，那为什么我们每个人对时空的认知都一样呢？比如说面前的2个杯子 ，A 来量和 B 来量，他们不会对尺度有什么分歧或者有什么歧义。虽然如果康德是对的情况下，这种时空形式都应该是主观投射上去的，难道主观的不应该就是随意的吗？但是康德肯定也一定会回应说，对，它是主观的，但它并不是随意的，它并不是一个任意的过程，它是人展开的，但是人是按照一定规则来展开它们，展开它们之后，这个规则被定下来，每个人有一样的规则，所以我们可以在同样的时空中，我们同样的虽然不同的展开的时空中，我们能够得到同样的结果。我觉得这并不矛盾，但是这是罗素的一个反对的观点。所以大概的方向就是康德认为时空形式是优先级非常高的东西，而罗素认为它和一般的概念和一般的认知的形式没有什么差别，并且时空呢是原来就在身外或者就在这个世界上的东西。
All right, cool. So, last thing with Kant's theory of knowledge, before we head on to Kant's ethics. So, Euclidean geometry is, in the same way, a priori synthetic. So, you have to figure it out, but you don't need experience. We understand it through our intuitive concept of space. That's what Kant says. Russell, on the other hand, disagrees. Russell says, first of all, not all geometry is synthetic. We don't need our intuitive concept of space to understand it. He says some geometry is deducible by pure logic, so it's analytic. You can just do it by definitions. And Russell's other problem is other geometry is only figured out in the 19th century after Kant dies, which is non-Euclidean geometry, which you guys may have covered in math class. So it's not a priori. It doesn't make sense to say it's a priori if, you know, all these smart people thinking about geometry for such a long time couldn't come up with it, and then with our new experiences of the world in the 19th century, we did come up with it. So no way that Kant could have known about math that would have been discovered after he died. But Russell does say he should have known about the fact that some geometry you can deduce just by definitions, so it can't be synthetic. So finally, Russell is also bothered by space and time being subjective, by that there's no such thing as space or time in the real world. Russell says it's possible to imagine space being subjective, but in that sense, it seems no different from another intuition about the qualities of the world, like color. He says, I don't see the difference between saying a rock is 1 meter away, but I can imagine someone seeing it as 2 meters away, and saying, I see the rock as red, but I can imagine someone else seeing it as blue. He says, that seems the same to me. On the other hand, I can't imagine someone seeing time as subjective, like someone seeing the ball flying before it's thrown. He says, I think everyone would see the ball is thrown and then it flies. So my response to Russell, if I can sort of insert myself in this argument between, two of the world's greatest philosophers, is that I don't really get where Russell's coming from here, where he says, it's not possible to imagine time being subjective, because if you've ever watched a horse race, and it's a very close horse race, you see this horse coming in first, the other person sees the other horse coming in first, you argue about it, and then you wait for the slow motion replay, and then you see clearly that this horse was in fact the one that came in first, and then you're both like, oh, okay. And so now you both see this horse is coming in first. But before the slow motion replay, you both honestly saw a different horse coming in first. Also, on a side note, this is science that I think was also past Russell, but thanks to modern science, there are people who've been blind since birth who have been restored science to by medicine. And we know from that it's possible to see and not intuitively understand space. Someone who's been blind since birth and then is suddenly given sight as an adult actually has a very hard time with perspective and distance. They walk into things. They find it very hard to navigate in the real world. Some of them actually even ask for their sight to be taken away again because they think it's so frightening to be in this new world. So that does suggest there's some amount of experience you need before you actually understand space.
So you disagree, Russell?
Yeah.
In the sense that actually it's not experience with space is not acquired, but inborn in human being or.
Yeah. So I think exactly. I think space sense of space is acquired. So I disagree with Russell.
Okay.
Yeah, you need some amount of experience. All right.
所以刚才 Trevor 也对罗素的那个就是他的论证感到很不满，然后不满其实问题还是纠结于在之前的到底是主观的还是客观的情况。然后其实这里 Trevor 也提到了一个很重要的一个论证，就是关于颜色的论证。其实我们刚才说到，就是康德会说 OK 颜色它是一个主观的东西。罗素可能会说颜色是一个客观的东西，不然的话，我们每个人为什么看到，比如说看到一朵玫瑰都会认为它是一样的红色呢？康德说不，其实客观世界存在的只是光波长为10纳米左右的那样子一个东西，但这个不是颜色，它绝对不是颜色，颜色是我们主观投射在那个东西之上的，你知道像一团火一样的那个暖暖的那个东西。这个东西是我们人投射在之上的东西，其实类似的，它们之间的差异也可以转移到对时间和空间的差异上来，就是大家觉得这可能是非常的绕，但是就请记住，就是对于康德来说有一个先天加工的过程， 对于我们客观的知识，康德总是在强调人脑对它的加工过程，而罗素总是在强调这个客观世界本来就已经蕴含了这些加工的东西，它其实并不是人需要人特别投射上去的一个东西。Yeah. So what about colorblind people?
So yeah. So I would say Kant's not very bothered by colorblind people. Kant says, because he doesn't say color is so fundamental in intuition as space. Russell, I think, would say someone who's colorblind, you could imagine that someone is colorblind just so much as we could imagine someone who's somehow born space blind. He says, like, both of those seem equally plausible, although I imagine all of us know someone who's colorblind, although not to the extent that they can't tell red from blue, but red from green is a common one. None of us, or very few of us at least, know someone who's really space blind. But so that would be Russell's response, that'd be Kant's response. Yeah. Sounds good to you, John?
Yeah, great.
All right.
Go on.
Cool. So I know we went through that fast. What animals see few colors?
Fewer colors, or can we imagine like the world of light, which can see actually much more colors than we do if we don't have that experience? But can we imagine that? Can we imagine a person who is living in a 4-dimensional world?
Yeah, I'd say both seem pretty unimaginable, right? They say birds too see in the ultraviolet spectrum.
Yeah.
And like I've seen pictures online which are like, this is what a bird sees the world as, but it seems like you wouldn't actually be able to imagine what it's like to see in the ultraviolet spectrum.
Yeah. The next question is actually better. It says that since, for everybody the redness is different, how can we guarantee that the redness we see here, for example, is the same redness?
That's classic.
Yeah, maybe
it's the problem.
Yeah.
The classic problem of other minds.
Mm-hmm.
So for both Kant and Russell, well, the answer is really you can't say that like exactly for redness, and that's sort of like Descartes is the first person to really put his finger on this problem. Is like you assume people are seeing the same redness as you. You assume that people are seeing things 1 meter away because of you talk to them, the way you see them interact in the world. But you can never really prove that. That's always the problem of other minds. Because like really, if you go all the way to Cartesian skepticism, if you go really, really far, you say, I don't even know if these other people exist.
Yeah. Sure. But for Kant, I mean, the sameness or the identity between the redness in me and redness in you is guaranteed by the a priori concept of redness, which is born in our concept already. So it's guaranteed there, in transcendental atmosphere, transcendental sphere. But for some, empirists or for the nominalists, it's not guaranteed. What I can see is not what you can see. That's who knows.
Yeah, that's a good distinction, John.
Yeah, great. So let's go on.
All right, cool. So we've gone through Kant's philosophy of knowledge once again. So knowledge is a priori or empirical, analytical or synthetic, space-time and causation are a priori. All right, so let's remember that, put that in our back pocket, and then go on to ethics. So now we remember Kant's ideas about thinking, or his thoughts about thoughts, if you want to be clever. Let's find out what he thought about ethics. This is a very silly joke I put in here. Can't touch this. based on a famous American song that probably did not make its way to China, Can't Touch This by MC Hammer. I wouldn't say it's a classic of American music, but it is very catchy. So if you're looking for a catchy song, look up Can't Touch This by MC Hammer. All right, so the goal of ethics. So Kant's goal is to come up with an a priori synthetic understanding of morality. So a priori, you don't need experience. Synthetic, you still have to figure it out. You don't know it from definition. So, geometry was our example of something that's a priori and synthetic before. So, to Kant, this a priori synthetic understanding of morality is embodied in the question, what should I do? So at any point, if you ask yourself, what should I do right now? This is what Kant is concerned with. So he's going to come up with the principles underlying morality and then show how they apply to our lives. So what is the bedrock of morality? This has to be a priori. You can't need experience, because Kant's still worried about Hume's critique of causation and induction. So if Kant's ethics rely on experience, someone like Hume could take them down just by questioning what exactly he's derived from his experience. Just saying like, are you sure? Are you sure? Did that really, did this cause this in the way you think? And that would destroy Kant's ethics. So the important thing to note here when we go into this is Kant assumes that this understanding can be found. For Kant, this isn't something that's really under question. So if you're a really radical skeptic and you question whether absolute morality exists or whether it's possible to apply a rational understanding to it, you're not going to be engaged here. So unsurprisingly, one of these radical skeptics is David Hume. So someone like David Hume, who would really question this, isn't going to be very satisfied. So you really have to be okay with the idea that an understanding can be found. Do you think we need translation?
Yeah, I think so. So,所以我们现在到了道德的领域，康德又开始重新使用刚才他两个维度的区分。康德说，道德领域我们所做出的一切的正确的区分，也同样是先天的，并且是综合的判断。所谓是综合的，是因为它带来了新的信息。请记住我们刚才关于分析的和综合的区分。所谓综合的，就是不能通过分析概念本身而得来的信息，而是需要带来新的信息。比如说 Barack Obama 是一个美国人，我们需要一些新的信息才能做出这样的判断。那同样的，我们不能通过分析好的或者是道德的这样的语汇来得出什么行为是正确的。所以在这个意义上，我们做出行为的决断的时候，我们所产生的信息是一些新的信息，所以它是一个综合命题。但是对于康德来说，大家请记住，一切的道德判断不是经验的命题，而是先天的命题。也就是说，虽然我们可能面对很多情形，我们面对这样子的七大姑八大姨的问题，我们所有的问题都是经验告诉我们现在有这样一个问题。但是请记住，康德一直强调，在我们做最后判断的时候，那个判断的那个形式或者是那个原则，它是超越于经验的。而是超越于经验，并且是完全服从于理性的那种理性的逻辑的数学的框架。大家有没有明白这一点？就是康德为什么在什么意义上，康德说我们的道德判断是先天综合的。
Alright. People are okay so far. Yeah. Alright. So, all right, yeah, sure.
Of course, they have much in common.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, so are there any questions so far, by the way?
Yeah, they only accept with reverse.
All right. All right. So the principles underlying morality. So to start off with, Kant thinks we need to determine what the absolute best thing in the world is. So if we're gonna try to figure out what exactly we want, we're gonna figure out like, yeah, so morality, we're getting what the best thing in the world. So what is it? And Kant says a good will, a will that makes its decisions only based on morality. So this is sort of a weird word here, but we'll go into this. To Kant, this is the best thing. A good will is the best thing, because we would never want to abandon it under any circumstances. And it's the only thing that makes everything else worth having. Nothing else, not riches or even virtues, can we say the same thing about. Therefore, goodwill is good in and of itself. So we never want to abandon it. It's the only thing that makes everything else worth having. We're just going to have to accept this for right now. Some of the examples you might come up with for a will that makes its decisions only based on morality aren't actually against this. Like you might say, well, what if you're hungry and you steal bread? And to illustrate this, I have a picture of Aladdin from the movie Aladdin stealing bread. And you might think this is an example against this, but hold your horses, relax a little bit, because we haven't even decided what morality is yet. All we're saying is that goodwill bases its decisions on morality. So, and the reason why not even virtues are good is because Kant says there are circumstances in which you'd be willing to be non-courageous. So you wouldn't want to be courageous all the time. All right? So goodwill must at all times consider duty. Even if we don't want to do something, we will still do it because it's the right thing to do. This is what it means to be moral. We try not to do things that are bad, and we try to do things that are good. And the try here is important. It doesn't matter if we're doing them, it matters that we're trying to do them. We're trying to do good things, we're trying not to do bad things. All right.
OK，所以对于康德来说，所有的正确行为都建立在他所谓的good will 上。大家一定要非常小心这个术语。这个术语翻译成中文，无论是叫良善，是叫善意，还是叫善良，听起来好像都是一个非常你知道非常有怜悯感的一个词汇。好像一个小女孩看见一条小狗狗很可怜，上去抱它一下。不对，在康德来说，这都是走心无脑的行为。对于康德来说，一切的 good will 都应该走脑。于是呢，这里就康德引出了一个新的概念，就是所谓的责任的概念。对于康德来说，只有通过了责任检验的 good will， 它才能算是一个 good will， 就是一个道德的抉择，它一定要通过一个所谓的责任的检验。那我们待会儿会看到这个检验是什么。对，就是 good will， 它其实和情感和一种非常直观的一种怜悯啊，和那些没有经过计算的抉择是没有关系的。它并不是一个人天生的一种动物性的感受，而是一种非常理性的结果，所以大家不要被这个良善的翻译打扰了。
All right, cool. So, morality. So now that we've covered, goodwill, morality. So what is this morality that a goodwill is basing its decisions on? So Kant answers that this morality that it's basing its decision on is the categorical imperative. And his categorical imperative first formulation, I ought never to act except in such a way that I could also will my maxim should become a universal law. So let's translate that into simple English. The only way you should act is if the principles you were acting on could become a law that everyone would have to follow. So if you cut in line, you're really saying everyone should cut in line. Or if you give to charity, you're really saying everyone should give to charity. So this is categorical because you have to follow it no matter who you are, as long as you have free will. Everything else is optional depending on who you are. So this, when we're talking about specifics, it depends on who you are, your circumstances, but generally speaking, everyone has to obey this. So there's only one other categorical imperative that we have to obey. You have to pursue your own happiness. But Kant says, because we don't know what would make us happy, we can't actually follow this categorical imperative. So notice this is pretty different from Aristotle. This is different from the Stoics, who say we do know what would make us happy. And they say it's morality, it's knowledge, it's goodness. So Aristotle and the Stoics both had happiness as a very key part of their moral system. Kant says it's separate and we don't know what would make us happy. Okay. So Kant had a couple examples to prove that this, the categorical imperative, is the fundamental moral law. He divided them into perfect duties and imperfect duties. Perfect duties are ones you have to refrain from doing. Imperfect duties are ones that you have to do. So, perfect duty towards yourself. You shouldn't commit suicide because a world in which everyone committed suicide would be a world with nobody in it. Therefore, there'd be nobody to rationally will anything. So, one categorical imperative, example of the categorical imperative is not committing suicide. If you commit suicide, no one's in this world. Another one, perfect duty towards others. You shouldn't break promises because a world in which everyone broke promises would be a world in which promises don't mean anything. So another example of the categorical imperative, right? So these are yourself towards others, don't. Imperfect duty towards yourself. So these are things you should do. You should develop your talents because a world in which nobody developed their talents is a world in which humanity would be much worse off. Imperfect duty towards others, something you should do towards others. You should try to make others happy because a world in which nobody tried to make others happy is a bad world to live in. By the way, in case you guys are wondering why I did acrobats, this is developing your talents. And I think this is a pretty famous Chinese acrobatic troupe. Yeah, I found their picture on Google Images, but I'm forgetting what their name is right now. Anyways, so let's discuss these. First of all, there's a mix here of not doing things because they wouldn't make sense if they were universalized. So you don't commit, and not doing things because they'd be bad for you if they were universalized. So, for instance, suicide would be, might be logical. There's nothing illogical about suicide here, but it would be a bad world because it'd be a world with nobody in it. However, if everyone breaks promises, promises don't mean anything, so that's actually an illogical world. It doesn't even make sense to say it's a world where everyone breaks promises, because then a promise loses all meaning. So also, part of this is these are universal moral laws. So remember, Stoics always had this thing where like, I'm a special person. The Stoic was, I'm a wise man. I have different rules that apply to me. So yes, other people should develop their talents, but I don't have to. Or other people should try to make others happy, but I don't have to. So Kant says everyone's the same. These rules are applying to everyone the same. You can't take the Stoic way out and just be like, yep, I'm special. Rules don't apply to me. And then final commentary here is, in terms of my personal feeling, is these does seem pretty simplistic, which is sort of a weakness of them. So like, for instance, practically speaking, we do live in a world in which people break promises, but promises aren't meaningless, right? Like, every time I see a friend, I'm like, oh, we should grab lunch soon. And like, yeah. Or, we have to grab lunch soon. And yeah, if he was like literal minded, my friend would be like, oh, Trevor said we had to grab lunch soon. That means he's willing to do whatever it takes for us to grab lunch soon. And then he'd be really disappointed when he'd be like, so let's do lunch tomorrow. And I'm like, I'm sort of tired and I've been eating out a lot this week. Maybe later. So he'd be like crushed and he'd be like, promises no longer mean anything. Trevor is a liar. But like, practically speaking, promises still do mean something, even though we're breaking them. So this is sort of a weakness of the a priori method. Of trying to come up with morality based on, sort of thinking really hard and logic rather than on how people actually work. So these examples don't hold up very well when you think about the real world. And that does make you wonder a little bit about his morality as a whole, if his examples don't hold up so well. All right, cool. So we just covered quite a bit. John.
We're chatting. Okay, let's do the page. Okay, great. So,所以康德我们现在开始聊康德的所谓 categorical imperative。记住这个词，就你在跟朋友聊天的时候是一个很好炫耀的点。它是康德所谓的绝对律令。康德的绝对律令，首先它是一个论战性的东西。它之所以是很新的东西，它是因为反对之前统治了哲学界很久的所谓亚里士多德的。幸福伦理学，对他的反对是很极端的。亚里士多德认为，我们人的行为呢是被一个结果引导着的，这个结果就是幸福。当然，对于亚里士多德来说，幸福不那么简单，它并不仅仅是一个声色犬马的愉悦，或者说有一个很单一的幸福。对于亚里士多德来说，很可能这个幸福是一个无所不包的一个很复杂的概念。但是康德说，决定我们行为正确的与否的，并不在于行动的结果，而在于我们决定行动本身的那个决定的方法。而这个方法呢，就是要把我们一切行动置于这个所谓的绝对律令的一个方程之下，一个形式之下，我们要检验我们的行动是不是正确。只有是经过了绝对律令检验的决定，才是一个正确的决定。那绝对律令在康德的学说中有很多个表达方式，这第一个表达方式就是所谓的普世化表达，就是说任何行为，康德说只有我们能够想象它能够成为一条普世的标准的时候，它才能够是正确的。比如说，我们可以说，一个人可以在饿的时候偷面包吗？或者一个人为了保护他的朋友，能不能对别人撒谎？对于康德来说，其实这都是一个道德两难的问题。但是我们解决它很简单，就是试想，如果全世界人都能够在饥饿的时候偷面包，或者全世界人都能够在保护亲友的时候撒谎的时候，这个世界会变成什么样？如果这个世界还能够存在，并且不会变得太差，或者甚至变得更好，那这就是一个好的决定。但是如果全世界人都这样做，这个世界就完蛋了，它就不是一个好决定。所以对于康德来说，这是他的所谓的categorical imperative。 依照这 categorical imperative， 它就生成了两种的，一种是绝不能做，一种是必须做的律令。我想这一切都很清楚。然后对这个提法很好，就是结果正义和程序正义。对于康德来说，康德是一个毫无疑问的程序正义者，而结果对于康德来说毫无意义可言。OK， 大家有什么问题 ？Any questions? You know, that's like the difference between the procedural justice and consequential justice. Great.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. So yeah. All right. Think you guys are doing pretty well so far. I'm digging it. Okay. So additional formulations of the categorical imperative. So Kant has basic ideas down. So he comes up with a few additional ways of thinking about categorical imperative. First way to think about the categorical imperative is act in such a way that you treat humanity, whether in your person or in the person of another, always at the same time as a means, as an end, and never simply as a means. So this is called the humanity formulation of the categorical imperative, and it's a little tricky. So essentially what Kant is saying here is we have to act so we consider ourselves and the other person as someone with a rational will, with a desire for happiness, and with moral obligations. So to whatever extent you can, you should be acting in a way that you encourage all of those in yourself and the other person. So for both yourself and the other person, you encourage rational will, desire for happiness, moral obligations. So that doesn't mean you can't go into, the barber and treat him as a means for a haircut. That's fine. He's not saying you can never use someone as, a service.
Simply as means. That means you can treat him as a means, but at the same time treat him.
Exactly. You have to also treat him as a person. So Kant's okay with you paying for him for a haircut, but if you, hold a gun to your barber's head and you say, cut my hair, you're not respecting his rational will, and you're not respecting his desire for happiness. So that's wrong. So Kant gets pretty weird about this means versus end. So for instance, he's against getting drunk, like this gentleman here, because it's not treating your own humanity as an end, instead it's treating it as a means. And his argument for this is a bit strange, and makes me think that Kant didn't get drunk that often. And it does make you wonder if he's against, napping, procrastinating, or all the small things that make life worthwhile. So additional formulation of the categorical imperative. Number 2, a rational being must always regard himself as giving laws, either as a member or a sovereign in a kingdom of ends, which is rendered possible by the freedom of will. So this is called the kingdom of ends formulation, and it's pretty obvious. So instead of following a law, now we're making a law. So it's a democratic form of the same idea. People have argued about it a lot, and you will see people saying, "Oh no, it's different." But for our purposes, it's pretty much the same. So we're not following the same law. Now we're making a law. And in terms of kingdom of ends, this picture is a visual pun. It's a kingdom with 2 ends. All right. So that seems good. John.
我们就先把注意力集中在它的第二个categorical imperative 的说法上。 我们刚刚已经说过，绝对律令有好几个提法或者有好几个形式，它们其实之间是等价的。但是非常有价值的是这个第二个形式，就是说，当你在行动的时候，你永远要把一个人不仅仅当作是手段，而要认真的对待他的 humanity。比如说，就是当我们在到一个理发师那里去理发的时候，当然他是在服务我们，或者是当我们在和一个人合作的时候，我们无可避免的要和身边的人有一种利用，或者说不是利用，有一种得利或者互相得利的关系。但是在这个意义上，你也不能把任何一个人仅仅看作是一个工具，或者是为了一个更高的目标而可以牺牲的一个棋子，而要把每个人的本身当作是一个可以建造的，甚至是你自己本身当作是一个可以建造的目的。比如说，当你喝酒的时候，对于康德来说，这是大多数时候是完全失去目的的一个行为。他明明是在透支明天的幸福，明明是在利用你的身体，利用你操纵你自己身体这样一个过程，获得某些快乐，而对自己完全没有建造的事，对于康德来说，这是一个不可以理解的事情。那第三个形式其实和第一个形式很像，就是说，你作为一个自由王国的立法者，你所立出来的法应该是能够通行的。Sorry.
All right. Cool. So, yeah, so we'll go through the summary and then we'll take a 5-minute break. And as we take a 5-minute break, we shall act in a way that as if every philosophy class should have a 5-minute break in the middle. So for Kant, summarize all this. For Kant, all of this should be a priori and synthetic. So given that we act like we have free will, and given that we think we are rational, we should act according to his universal law. So it's just from the get-go. So in my opinion, it's not quite as convincing as Kant's metaphysics, because it definitely wouldn't stand up to determined skeptic. Kant never gets around to proving why his law is the one we have to follow. Like specifically, and not only would it be hard to follow all the time, in real life, it wouldn't necessarily be advisable. So as my example for this, I have a buffet table with crab legs. So I don't know what buffets are like in China, but in America, it's well known that crab legs are the best part of a buffet table. I have seen people getting very close to getting in fights over crab legs at a buffet table. Americans really love them. So let's say you're at this buffet table and you're wondering if you should grab crab leg. So Kant would say, well, no, because if everyone does that, some people would get a crab leg, wouldn't get a crab leg, and they'd be unhappy. But then that'd end up with no one getting a crab leg. So Kant's rules make everyone, unhappy with no crab legs, instead of someone quite unhappy because someone else has a crab leg. So, it's pretty hard to apply Kant's categorical imperative to this, crab leg buffet table. So instead, you might think, well, we should come up with some really specific rules about who should get crab legs and in what circumstances, and how to really make it so everyone is as happy as possible, given that there's a limited supply of crab legs. So that'd sort of be the logical next step. And that idea is actually what we're going to talk about next course with the utilitarians who see this problem and have an answer to it. But for Kant, he doesn't have a great answer. John.
Clear, but yeah, 就是康德在普世化的时候，他Trevor 不是太同意这样子一个解决方案，就是把所有的选择都做一个普世化的处理。 比如说康德会说，假如说一个桌子上只有5个螃蟹腿的话，那有20个人应该怎么办呢？如果每个人都得一个，那当然很多人就会打起来。那对于康德来说，可能最好的解决方案就是每个人都不要去拿。我觉得大家可以自己想思考，然后自己讨论这个问题。有没有问题到现在为止？
Yeah. So if there are any questions about Kant's ethics, let's ask them now. Otherwise, let's go on to break. Oh, just to be clear, there is a difference between crab and crabby. Crabby is in English is someone who's cranky, who's a little, like if you think of like an old guy who's always complaining about the world, or someone who just woke up and they're not very happy about being woken up early, they'll probably act crabby. Yeah, they'll go around pinching everyone around them. So that's what crabby means in English, and then crab is of course the sea creature.
Well,
All right. So yes. So Kant is against getting drunk. So yeah, all right. It seems like people are pretty good and probably want to be on break. So I'll see everyone back here at 10:20. So see you at 10:20.
Yep.
And we'll go on. All right. Cool. All right. So we've got a question. Oh, all right. How to translate this sentence? That was the question. So is this a translation of this?
Yeah.
Well, what do you think of this translation?
Yeah, that's great. That's great. But I don't understand why it's against drunkenness. I mean, why is it using yourself? Is it manipulating your body just to satisfy something?
Yeah,
I don't get the logic here.
I think the logic against getting drunk is something like, you know, for Kant, things which are worthwhile, will, moral obligations. So, you know, Kant is obviously seeing his life as like a good life, right?
Yeah.
So like, you know, he's seeing like there's some biological manipulation we can do.
Yeah.
You know, we can happen to poison ourselves in a really pleasurable manner. And so then like we're just manipulating our biology to like do, and like especially, you know, seeing what people do when they are drunk, they tend not to be the most moral of people.
Yeah.
You know, Kant's not going to be a huge fan of that.
Yeah. So when you are drunk, you are not actually treating yourself as a human being, in his sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Quite contrary to my understanding.
Yeah, you know, I'm not a big fan. I think Kant's ethics to me are also just really much someone who I think spent a lot of time thinking and writing, but like it doesn't seem like someone who spent that much time in the real world, you know?
Kind of hardcore fusion.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, cool. So, it is 10:20. So, to avoid setting.
It's very strange because the translation show up in your laptop but not here. So maybe he hasn't got it email. So can you send that again to them? The translation, just copy it and paste it.
I think it should be okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it should be okay.
Uh-huh.
All right. So philosophy of ethics. For summary, categorical imperative is the ultimate moral law. So let's go on to background. The two main influences on Kant's ethics are Hume, of course, and Rousseau. So Hume woke Kant up from his dogmatic slumber, as we already covered, and legend has it that Kant only ever broke his daily routine once while he was reading Rousseau's Emile and read it for several days straight without, you know, completely interrupting his daily routine. So, Humean ethics. So Hume's ethics were as skeptical as you'd expect from David Hume. So rather than answer what our ethics should be, Hume talked about how we developed our ethics. So he argued that our ethics come from our passions, and that even our reason is slave to our emotions. So instead of, you know, thinking logically about what we should do, he said we just, you know, feel this way, we feel that way, and that's how we come up with how we feel we should do. And even when we think that we're thinking about our ethics, even when we think that we're reasoning, really it's just all about what we're feeling. And so we develop our ethics, our general rules, you know, don't kill, don't steal, whatever, from the way we feel when we think about others' actions. So when we think about someone killing someone else, when we think about someone stealing something, and we feel bad, we feel horrible, that's how we come up with our general ethics. Don't steal, don't murder. So Hume's account, where it's really all about what we're feeling and all about our emotions and nothing about logic at all, it's pretty disturbing for Kant. Like, you know, you can think of Kant as like this very logical man, is pretty freaked out by this. Rousseau, on the other hand, is a very, very different man. So Rousseau is this French romantic philosopher, and that's romantic with a capital R, so period, who held that people were inherently good and government was often a source of evil. So he championed free will, self-governance, and individual self-determination. So, decide what you want to do, direct yourself. And specific details don't have a ton of impact on Kant. Emphasis on the importance of the individual does. And by the way, I won't go into them in this class, but if you ever want someone with both a very weird and, honestly speaking, very unethical life, read Rousseau's biography. He is, for someone who in his writings comes off as a great guy, in his real life he is a nasty, strange man. I don't know if you
He actually tortured Hume actually when Hume was in France. So everyone warns against him. Don't get so close to Rousseau because he's dangerous. He always hurts his friends, but Hume is so generous man. He doesn't take that seriously. So he was hurt actually. By Rousseau.
Anyways, we won't go into it here. You can look up. You can look it up if you're interested. So Kant's ethics are a repudiation of Hume's skepticism and appreciation of Rousseau's romanticism. So he says no to this idea that ethics come from emotions, and he says yes to free will and self-determination, all that. So it's reasoned, it's built from the ground up, and it champions the rights of an individual. Again, humanity is an end, not a means. And it's impossible to separate his ethics from his metaphysics. So everything that has an impact on his metaphysics, on his theory of knowledge, has an impact on his ethics. All right, John, quick summary.
Yeah. OK， 我们刚才讲到康德，我们现在开始聊康德的哲学背景。其实当然卢梭也是一个很重要的人物，但是卢梭对于康德的伦理学的影响并不大，所以我们主要关注休谟。我们知道休谟一直是用一个怀疑主义的方式攻击一切东西的人，但是在伦理学方面，休谟反而是变得很坦诚，他并没有攻击我们的现行的道德法则，而只是很软性的告诉大家，道德法则其实并没有我们想象的那么绝对。就是比如说，当我们在谈论不能杀人、不能偷盗的时候，好像它是一个神法，或者经常有政治哲学家或者法学家们会来争论，这对于一个国家是多么必要，所以它必须被禁止。种种的所谓的理性的讨论，仿佛这是一件理性的事情，比如说不能杀人。但是对于休谟来说，他说一切的道德基础其实都建立在人和人之间的感情之上。想一想同情心，比如说我们在想不能杀人的时候，其实我们到底在想什么？我们是在说不能杀人是违反一条很糟糕的违反一个很重要的神律，或者是他在动摇一个国家的统治的根基吗？不是的，休谟说，其实你无非是在思考你的身边的人。当你想象他被捅了一刀的时候，你也感觉到痛，或者你想象到他家的东西早上起来你自己家的东西被偷走的时候，你感觉到很愤怒，所以你才禁止了偷盗，或者你才觉得这是一个道德上极其猥琐的事情。这是休谟对于所谓的道德法则的解释进行了一个非常情感化的解释。他说一切其实都是建立在情感之上，而不是理性之上。这是休谟的伦理学。那我们现在看康德。
Cool.
Any questions? Is everything clear?
All right. Agrees with Hume.
Yeah. Me too.
There's some part of me that is very I'm sympathetic towards Hume. I'm not sure I can go as far as he can, but I certainly see where he's coming from. All right. So that's our outline. What influences Kant's philosophy, ethical philosophy, Hume, Rousseau, and Kant's own metaphysics. So our last thing that we're going to do is, how did Kant argue? So, groundwork for the metaphysics of morals. So, groundwork for the metaphysics of morals, published in 1785, was the first of Kant's great moral works. Kant divides philosophy into three areas of investigation: logic, physics, and ethics. So in physics is what you'd expect, it's like science and that sort of thing, which, if you guys remember, Kant did actually care about and did write a fair bit, including coming up with the theory of how the solar system came about. So like physics, ethics is both a priori and empirical. So the methods of thinking are a priori, so no experience required, but proof about what actually works in the real world is empirical. Experience is required. Oh, by the way, so one thing that's pretty interesting is, so a priori physics deals with space and time. So this is pretty rational, pretty expected considering Kant's metaphysics, Kant's logic, but it's super interesting if you know anything about Einstein's theory of relativity and like the importance of space and time to that. Makes it much more interesting that Kant places a focus on it in his physics. And so the metaphysics of morals, the a priori part, that's our guide and the norm for measuring the effectiveness of real world morality. So that's what we start off with without experiences. How do we actually measure real world morality? Well, what's our guidelines? So Kant's trying to discover this. And here we have, for my own entertainment, Kant's groundwork for the metaphysics of morals in German, which I will now attempt to pronounce, and John can tell me how well I do. Grundlegung der Metaphysik der Gitten von Immanuel Kant.
Bravo.
Oh, thank you. I did actually visit Germany, but only for a week or two. Yeah, rubbed off a little bit. All right, so you guys are clear on what we're doing here. We're trying to discover the guide and the norm, measuring effectiveness of real world morality. Makes sense? Then let's start. So to begin with, there's nothing so good as goodwill. So as always, I'm going to read it directly, translate into simple English, comment on it, and then John can translate. So there's nothing it is possible to think of anywhere in the world, or indeed anything at all outside it, that can be held to be good without limitation, excepting only a goodwill. Understanding, wit, the power of judgment, and like talents of the mind, whatever they might be called, or courage, resoluteness, persistence, and intention, as qualities of temperament, are without doubt in some respects good and to be wished for, can also become extremely evil and harmful. If the will that is to make use of these gifts of nature, whose peculiar constitution is therefore called character, is not good. So simple translation, you can imagine anything good being bad in the hands of someone who's bad. So even courage or persistence or wit would be not something you want in a bad person. Goodwill is the only thing that's good, no matter who's holding it. So in terms of commentary on this, I'm not sure where a character trait like empathy or even kindness would come in here. Maybe it's not the greatest virtue, but it would never seem to be bad to have emotional impulses towards your human beings. You know, fellow human beings have positive impulses. Kant would argue that like the good part of that comes under goodwill, But then that seems a bit unfair because it just seems like whatever is good, he would come under goodwill, and then goodwill is best by definition. So I think Kant's a little unfair to the virtues here. So anyways.
Yeah. 所以我们开始谈到就是康德的第一本关于道德哲学的小册子，所谓的道德行为上学基础。其实这本书也不厚，有一个苗栗篇的翻译很好，大家可以自己回去读，其实很快就读完了，很有意思的一本小书。然后康德呢，首先呢，就是对于前人的所谓的道德伦理学的一个踏伐，因为前人道德伦理学总是在试图处理所谓各种不同道德品之间的关系啊、分类啊，还有它们的结构。那对于康德来说呢，这一切都是微不足道的，因为一切的道德，甚至比如说是勇气，比如说是走心的同情，或者说很强的，比如说很强的决断力和执行力，这一切的东西，他说都可能被工具化，然后最后带来很糟糕的结果，不管是对自己还是对别人。只有经受住了理性的检验，这样子的道德才会是一个好的道德。Yeah.
All right. Good stuff. So goodwill is good because of itself, nothing else. So even if through the peculiar disfavor of fate, or through the meager endowment of a stepmotherly nature, this will were entirely lacking in the resources to carry out its aim, if with its greatest effort nothing of it were accomplished, and only the good will were left over, be sure not a mere wish, but as the summoning up of all the means insofar as they are in our control. No, I'm good. Then it would shine like a jewel for itself, as something that it has its full worth in itself. Utility or fruitlessness can neither add to nor subtract anything from this worth. So for simple English translation, even if we aren't able to accomplish any of the good things we want to accomplish, then we'd still be praiseworthy. So it'd still be a good thing even if we can't do any of the good things we want to do. So, and he says, even further than that, accomplishing good works is not better than merely intending good works. So I'm not saying I have any problem with this logically. It does sort of seem like a philosophy for someone who has, these grand intentions to do charity, but never actually, gets out of his house. But, that's not an a priori criticism of this.
所以刚才在攻击了所谓的美德伦理学，就是普通意义上的美德伦理学之后，这里康德开始攻击所谓的功利伦理学，就是所谓的好的行为是给大家带来最大程度上的幸福或者最大程度上的财富，这样子的伦理学对康德来说，就算做对了一件事情，就算他能够做得最好，但是如果出于良善的意志，不是出于理性的检验，不是出于一个好的意图，那这样子的事情对于康德来说是不足道的。那么反而言之呢，假如说是出于一个好意图，你明明知道它是很无望的，比如说当你去帮助一个垂死的人的时候，你明明知道这完全是没有意义的，有时候甚至还会增加他的痛苦，但是如果是出于良善的意志，对于康德来说这种是可以接受的判断。
All right. So Kant says, goodwill is the purpose of our reason. Like, that's why we have it. And you might think that it's possible we're not supposed to regard goodwill as the purpose of our reason. That's not why God gave us reason. He says, you might think maybe we're really supposed to have reason for happiness, or maybe we're really supposed to have it for our welfare, to do the best for ourselves. And Kant says, nope, you're wrong. In the natural predispositions of an organized being, i.e. a being arranged purposively for life, we assume as a principle that no instrument is to be encountered at it for any end except that which is the most suitable to and appropriate for it. Now, if in a being that has reason and a will, its preservation, its welfare, and a word, its happiness, were the real end of nature, then nature would have hit on a very bad arrangement in appointing reason in this creature to accomplish the aim. For all the reasons it has to execute towards its aim, the entire rule of its conduct would be prescribed to it much more precisely through instinct. That end could be obtained far more safely through it than could ever happen through reason. So, simple English, if there's a purpose, simple English is necessary for this.
Right. Yeah.
If there's a purpose to our reason and will, it can't be welfare or happiness. We can't be given reason and we can't be given will because it would make us better or make us happier, because instinct would have made a much better job than reason and will. So I think it's really interesting that Kant's answer here is evolutionary, or if not evolutionary, then this argument by design. Darwin, of course, would have a lot to say to Kant about this, as would anyone who believes in evolution rather than being designed. But I think Kant hits on something interesting here, that it's odd we have this capacity to think about morality. From a Darwinian perspective, it's, maybe an evolutionary accident, or maybe just something we've evolved to for, social bonding. But I think it is something weird that we have to think about.
所以说，where should I begin?
So
Just
yeah,
page.
yeah.
Yeah, great. 所以康德在这里用了一个非常亚里士多德的论证，就是说，首先你要理解我们的人是什么。人某种意义上最重要的特征是和动物相对的特征，就是理性。动物也有感觉，动物也有冲动，动物也有他们所想要满足的欲望，但是人唯一不同的，或者能把人定义成人的一个工具，或者说一个特征，那当然是理性。就像一把刀，它的好的功能不是去砸人，而是去砍人一样。那一个人，他最重要的事情，并不是去满足他的幸福，满足他的欲望，而是去实现他的理性的最大功用。这是康德的一个非常强的一个目的论的不是目的，但某种意义上也是目的论的一个论证吧。
Alright. So we can actually find evidence for this, that reason doesn't and will don't do much for happiness, and how miserable smart people are. So in fact, we also find that the more a cultivated reason gives itself over to the aim of enjoying life and happiness, the further his human being falls short of true contentment. From this arises in many, and indeed in those most practiced in the cultivated reason use of reason, if only they are sincere enough to admit it, a certain degree of misology, i.e. hatred of reason. So those who are most reasonable hate reason because it makes them unhappy. So like this poor guy here. Reason can't guide us to happiness. And so as commentary, it's also worth noting that those who are the most reasonable doubt the powers of reason the most. So Kant and Hume are incredibly reasonable human beings in the sense that, their logic is perfect, the way they think is better than almost all of humanity, and because of that, they doubt reason more than almost anyone else. So it's an interesting thing to think about.
所以又回到刚才的问题，就是我当然不太赞成康德的所谓一切的事情就都是理性的，能够达到一个最好的一个结果。当然这就是 it's the main difference between you and Kant actually. So你们可以自己判断。
Yeah. All right. Cool. So, I think everyone's doing okay so far. Are there any questions so far?
Hello, where are you?
Is everyone sleeping? All right. Yeah, so that's what Kant's arguing. But yeah, all right. So I think everyone is sleeping a bit. So let's finish this up. And yeah, all right. There is a lot to think about. So given that we have reason, therefore it must be for goodwill. So you know, if reason can't make us happy, if reason can't do anything for our welfare, Kant concludes the only reason we have reason is for goodwill.
The says Kant says that you don't need to be happy.
Yeah.
Or the only happiness you must.
Yeah, Kant says happiness is totally accidental, no use pursuing it.
Yeah.
And you should just feel bad that you weren't born a dog, because as we all know, dogs are very happy and have no reason whatsoever. Luckier creatures than us. All right. Yet since reason nevertheless has been imparted to us as a practical faculty, i.e., by the way, i.e. Is an important word to know in English, so I'll just explain it. It's Latin, id est, and it means that is. So he's specifying what exactly he means when he says i.e. You'll see that a lot as you read. i.e., as one that ought to have influence on the will, its true vocation must therefore be not to produce volition as a means to some other aim, but rather to produce a will good in itself, for which reason was absolutely necessary, since everywhere else nature goes to work purposively in distributing its predispositions. This will may therefore not be the single and entire good, but it must be the highest good, and the condition for all the rest, even for every demand for happiness. So in simple English, if reason does have power over the will, which it seems that it does, the only reason must be to produce a good will, a will that desires morality. And that's a good thing in and of itself. So without anything else, a will that desires morality is good in and of itself. So I think this argument is a little weak if you're not totally on board with Kant. So I'm not totally on board with Kant right now, and for me, reason can direct the will in any other ways, rather than, just happiness and welfare. So I feel like I could form this argument towards the will to hunger, and you want to satisfy it, and reason is directing the will in a way such as you can get food. And I think I could produce a argument that seems as convincing as this one, or at least close. I don't think Kant makes a good argument for he's struck down everything else and the only thing left is goodwill. Yeah.
So 刚才我们已经说，就是康德进行了一个目的论的论证，所谓做一个完全的人，或者说做一个道德的人，就是做一个充分尊重理性的人。这里康德把他的论证再往下迈一步，就是做一个尊重理性的人，就是做一个服从道德法则，就是做一个服从绝对律令的人。在这一步上，Trevor 认为这不太正确，因为你完全是一个理性的人，你也可以完全是一个用理性来作恶的人，就是在理性的和良善的之间，康德这一步，当然康德还是有别的论证的，但是在这里看来，康德似乎走的有一些太武断。
So goodwill manifests itself through adherence to duty. So in other words, a person shows their goodwill by being determined to follow a moral code, whether it's in line with your natural inclinations or not. So regardless of how you feel, you show your goodwill by how strongly determined you are to follow your moral code. To be beneficent when one can is where one can is a duty, And besides this, there are some souls so sympathetically attuned that even without any other motive of vanity or utility to self, take an inner gratification in spreading joy around them, can take delight in the contentment of others insofar as it is their own work. But I assert that in such a case, the action, however it may conform to duty and however amiable it is, nevertheless has no true moral worth. It is on the same footing as other inclinations. So in simple English, this is actually a pretty weird statement. In simple English, if you do nice things because you're nice, rather than because you have to, you're not good. You're not any better than someone who would do mean things because they're mean. It's the same moral footing. If you do nice things because you're nice, or if you do mean things because you're mean, same moral footing. So as commentary on this, we have to assume here that a nice person who does nice things can be good if they would do them even if they weren't nice. But even still, it is really weird. So Kant wants us all to be constantly thinking of what's good and what's bad, and it's a weakness for that to be instinctual. It's a weakness to feel one way or another. You should be thinking constantly what's good, what's bad. And like, again, it just gives me the really strong feeling that this seems like the morality of someone who doesn't do many good things in real life. Like, he sees all these people doing nice things and he's like, oh, they're just nice people. But they're not really good people. They're just nice. That's the way they feel. And he's like, every time I do a good thing, I'm thinking about it, which means I'm a good person. So again, like, it's not a great a priori way of criticizing it. Like, Kant's not wrong logically here, but it does seem like, practically speaking, it's a very weird way to live.
所以康德在这里其实加了一条更重要的标准，对于一个善意的行为，就是一个善意的一个道德的行为。对于康德来说，一个道德的行为并不是看这个行为的外表，就是看它是不是达到了一个符合绝对律令的这样子的一个行为，而是看它的内部的决策过程是不是经过了所谓义务的检验。大家可以想象，比如说在一个道德的社会，你从小长大，如果你接受一切的外面的世界加给大家的标准，比如说你是一个好学生，然后你是一个同情周围人的人，然后你并且很乐意于这样做，但是你这样做的时候，你说不清楚目的是为了什么，或多或少是在满足旁人的目光，或多或少是在满足和大家其乐融融的感觉。在康德看来，这也是不足取的，它只是你自己为了骗取一些公民道德而进行的一些非常像猩猩一样的模反的走心不走脑的行为。对于康德来说，这样一切都必须是你自己思考，经过自己的思考，经过自己的道德律令化的检验之后，你所得出来的自己的决定，当你在行为出来的时候，它才能算是一个道德的行为，才能算是一个理性的行为。
So to conclude Kant's arguments, duty is respect for the law, or the moral code. But this is all a priori. So we only have to consider the will when we think about duty, not the effect of the action. So when you're respecting the law, all you have to be doing is, trying to be good. It doesn't matter the effect, because the effect would be a posteriori, it'd be empirical, you'd need experience. And Kant says this does seem strange for a law, because normally you make a law because a certain effect is expected from the law. You think that something is going to happen. But what kind of law can it be whose representation, without even taking account of the effect expected from it, must determine the will so that they be called good absolutely and without limitation? Since I have robbed the will of every impulse that could have arisen from the obedience to any law, there's nothing left over except the universal lawfulness of the action in general, which alone is to serve the will as its principle. I.e., I ought never to conduct myself except so that I could also will that my maxim become a universal law. So, translated into simple English, the only law that can be considered a priori is an ultimate law, which has itself as its own justification. So the justification of following this law is that it transforms any law action you take into a universal law. So then you can see if your action was good. So it's not really so much a law as a law machine. It transforms your actions into laws. So as commentary, this is the ultimate point of everything that Kant says. So this is important. As we've learned, it's good in theory, it's difficult in concept. And one of the most difficult parts is that in order to evaluate this as a universal law, you do need some amount of empirical evidence. Like you do need some experience in the world to be able to really judge if this is right. So it's not as a priori as it seems or as Kant pretends. All right, last translation, John.
Yes, 这里康德又回到了之前他所提出的就是关于他的绝对律令为什么是唯一可以被理性论证的美德的这样一个论证上来，就是说对于康德来说，任何的其他的美德都是可以被工具化的，而只有绝对律令或者说只有康德他提出的道德法则，他认为在这最后一点上你是无法把它相对化的，因为它本来就有一个绝对化的或者说普世化的一个诉求，在这一点上呢，比如说甚至和同情都是很不相同的，甚至同情康德认为它这样子的美德虽然是很重要的，但是它也可以酿成很多大错，但是呢绝对不是理性所制定出来的普世化的绝对律令法则啊。
All right, awesome. So we're done with how Kant argued, and so to conclude, how does he argue? He argues deductively, but he has way more assumptions and way less obvious assumptions than his philosophy of metaphysics. So it is still deductive, but you have to take more on faith than when you read his metaphysics, when you read his theory of knowledge. And the way he's arguing is like these long, reasoned passages with pretty difficult language. So let's conclude this lesson. Kant's moral code, in my opinion, is not perfect. It's really interesting. It's really logical. But it's just not quite what we want. And I think it really lacks the universality that Kant thinks it has. Kant says it's a categorical imperative. Everyone follows this all the time. But it just doesn't work that well because, first of all, not everyone's going to agree to follow this all the time. But even if everyone did, not everyone would agree how to apply Kant's law. So it's pretty difficult to actually apply it as a system of ethics.
That doesn't matter, Kant would say.
Oh yeah, Kant doesn't care, but that's because Kant spends his time in his books.
Yeah.
But the next coming age, we're in the 1700s right now. When we go into 1800s, we're going into a world of empires. It's going to be empires and guns and telegraphs and all these exciting things and most fun trains. And not only is it going to be like, men writing in their books, but actually a question of how do you govern an empire? Practically speaking, when you have this huge amount of territory, what's the best way to govern it? And we're really considering lives here. So the next people we cover, and this will just be me alone, is the utilitarians in the 19th century. So get excited for the utilitarians and their scientific way of ethics. All right, cool. Thank you very much. I know Kant is always difficult, but I think you guys did well. Homework should be up already. I don't think I've put Stoicism up on Reddit, so I'll do that. And yeah, all right. All right. So yeah, we'll stick around for a couple minutes, answer questions, and otherwise I'll see you guys on Wednesday. All right. What do you think of Kant's ethics, John?
Yeah, open for discussion.
Open for discussion. All right.
Yeah.
Seems like the students are still digesting, still thinking about the implications, the arguments.
Yeah, that's really the German way of doing this thing.
Yeah.
If everybody believes in that, it works sometimes.
Yeah.
It's very strange.
The Germans do have a tendency to come up with ideas and then forcibly apply them to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
I would say that's a German thing.
Yeah.
So the next class we'll be doing in a week is the existentialists. So,
cool.
Yeah. So focusing on Sartre.
Okay. Okay. The French guys.
Yeah, French guys.
Great.
And then and also Camus. I like Camus. Yeah. All right. Seems like people are good. So I'll see you guys on Wednesday. And do your homework. Engage with the material. All right. Good stuff. Bye-bye.
Bye.